Keep talking.
All right.
Alexis.
Well, anyway, they have a great podcast that I didn't listen to the whole thing. I've only gotten their preview, so they have a great preview that they put out. We're really excited, and this just goes to show some of the quality of the stuff that these guys are doing over at The Athletic. It's absolutely impressive. It's absolutely incredible. You already know their writing. Their journalism, the way they cover the sport is absolutely incredible as well. They talk about MLS in a way that we never could, which is, based in education and based in knowledge. And we just don't do that. We like more of a vibes type thing. And how much longer do I have to continue talking about these two people? Because I'm ready to just say their name. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Tenorio and Stejskal, everybody.
Okay, we should be hearing them. You guys, what's up, guys?
Hey guys, how's it going? That was incredible filling work right there, Alexis.
Okay, you see, we're pros. We did the test, but when I looked at the screen, it was all just dark and you could only see us. And I'm like, all right, well, something's up. Yeah, this is what happens when you do it live. Okay, we're doing it live.
The background looks great. Congratulations, Christian. He really did do more of the work.
How are you guys doing? First of all,
I'm doing good. Paul, how are you doing?
I'm all right. I mean, Sam, as usual, he's got the vibes right for the Cooligans. I'm way too dressed up for you two. That's all I know.
Yeah, this is completely lacking in professionalism, and I should have told you that. There's no reason for it. But why don't I look? I talked a lot about this, but why don't you give the fans an idea of what this is like? Because this is what I like about this podcast is it's more serialized. I guess is really the only way I could explain it. This is not just you two chopping it up, doing silly bits like we do. You actually went out and did work.
We tried anyway. Paul, why don't you tell them what it's about? You're more polished than I am with your fancy button down.
Yeah. Well, the goal of this podcast was to tell the story of this U.S. team that's going to play in the World Cup in 3 weeks. We're only 3 weeks away from the start of the World Cup, and we wanted the podcast to tell the story for the casual fans who are just going to start getting excited about the World Cup now, and they're saying, "Oh crap! Like we better learn about this team and know what we're rooting for." But also for the diehard fans who have followed along this entire journey that we've been on. So, the episodes take you to 5-part series, and it starts with kind of like the history of the USMNT leading into Couva, what happened in Trinidad 5 years ago, Christian Pulisic and his role in kind of opening the pathway for many of the members of this U.S. team. Episode 3, which is, I think, my favorite and Sam's favorite as well, which is going through kind of game by game, the qualifying, what happened before qualifying, what really impacted this team. And then, the last 2 episodes are debating whether this is a golden generation and what we should expect from the team in Qatar. So you're trying to tell the story, like I said, from kind of the beginning all the way through what we expect to see on November 21st when they open up against Wales.
I mean, you guys have covered this sport pretty intensely. Did you find anything new out? Is there any gem you could maybe drop that would get the listeners to want to listen to it? I mean, to tell the fans from all the work you've done, what is it? Is there something that stuck out to you?
A few things. So we talked to Gregg Berhalter for like an hour for this podcast. We talked to a lot of people for a long time, but that was maybe our most important interview. And we talked about, I don't know if you guys remember, it was 2019. The U.S. had lost the Gold Cup final to Mexico in Chicago, and they came out to our part of the world and played Mexico again in a friendly at MetLife. And they got smashed 3-0. They were trying to play out of the back. And they kept getting turned over, and Mexico was just right down their throats. Everyone was super pissed after the game, except for Gregg Berhalter, who was like, no, it's part of the process, blah, blah, blah. We believe in what we're doing, et cetera, et cetera. Well, he told us in this interview that we did with him, he was like, I didn't really understand it, the level of pain that there was off of not qualifying for 2018. And in that moment, he was worried about losing the locker room if he didn't kind of switch things up, which he did a little bit in subsequent matches. So that was one that stood out to me. And then I think Tyler Adams was just a really entertaining interview throughout. Paul did that one solo, so he's got a better feel, but he was dropping F-bombs left and right about the decision to play him at right back in Honduras, talking about the environment in El Salvador, being like, whoa, this is something different. So those were really fun for me.
Yeah, there was at least a, I was dropping a lot of F-bombs when we didn't qualify in 2018. I get why
I was dropping a lot of tear bombs, dude.
But missing that World Cup. So, just from hearing the trailer, it definitely sounds like Gregg Berhalter was very mindful of getting that like stink of losing. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like it was an important thing where, you know, I remember we interviewed Matt Beasler, and he was one of the players that was in Couva and a part of that loss. And there is it seemed like it was very important to shed some of the players that were involved in that loss so that they can move forward. But did you get a sense of that as well, that part of the transition to where we are today was simply like, you know, changing that mindset and getting rid of people that kind of experienced too much of that trauma from that loss?
Yeah, I mean, I think to some extent, like we talked to DeMarcus Beasley. I sat with him here in Chicago, and he said like if there was any positive at all, and he didn't. I mean, he was like there wasn't a positive, but if I'm going to try to make a positive out of what happened in Trinidad, it's that it kind of forced a hard reset. Like there wasn't an after the World Cup, maybe there would have been a few more months of like transition periods where guys like Michael Bradley or Matt Beasler or whoever may have still been involved in the process. He was like, man, I barely came back to be part of that cycle. He's like, I definitely would have been gone. But like, there could have been more of a transition period had the U.S. qualified for that World Cup. And instead, yeah, they didn't want there to be a transition period, right? After that failure in Trinidad, it was, Josh Sargent, Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, all coming in and making their debuts, Tim Weah. And so there was that kind of just immediate, like, can we move on? But, like Sam was saying, and I think what Gregg Berhalter didn't realize is like, there was a sense of like a restart, but the cloud of Couva, of what happened in that cycle, it did not leave. And it didn't leave all the way until San Jose, Costa Rica in March, like until they qualified for the World Cup. Like, every single result, good or bad, was seen, through the prism of like missing a World Cup. Like everything had to be considered in that way. And it was heavy, man. I mean, like it's been really heavy for the team. And you could see that like sense of relief after the game in Costa Rica, that they could move past that a little bit, because, it's hard to carry that. And for a lot of guys, they're carrying something that they had nothing to do with, right? I mean, like there were a few guys who were there. Christian Pulisic was there. DeAndre Yedlin, Paul Arriola was a part of that group. Jordan Morris was like a little bit a part of, but like for most of these guys, like they were watching on TV like the rest of us. And so, it took all 4.5, 5 years to get rid of that. And really, even then, like I think what happens this month in Qatar is going to play a big role as well.
What about when Italy didn't qualify at the same time? People resigned. From the from the federation. People resigned in shame. They apologized to the nation, and what we got told was, hey, if the ball goes a little bit to the left 2 inches, no problem. Was there any focus on that at all? Was there any conversation about the federation's role in sort of getting back into the World Cup, or maybe what maybe should have been done?
We didn't talk a ton about the immediate or lack of immediate fallout, maybe from Couva. I can't even remember how quickly Bruce Arena stepped down. I think it was pretty fast. Sunil Gulati, I think, took a little bit longer to depart, the U.S. soccer president at the time. But we did spend a little bit of time talking about the hiring process of Gregg Berhalter, which I'm sure you guys remember was kind of controversial. There weren't like
his brother was involved.
Candidates reported. His brother was the COO of the federation, and it just kind of felt inevitable. And it took a whole year to hire him because he wanted to finish the season with Columbus. That was a little bit controversial for sure. So we spent a little bit of time there, but most of it was forward looking. And that to me is the most interesting part of this team, because not only are they going to have a ton of attention on them in 3 weeks when they play that first match against Wales, but no matter what they do in Qatar, there's still 2026 on the horizon, when pretty much all of these important players are going to be in the middle of their primes. And so this moment is like sort of transformational, right? Lives are going to change depending on what they do at the World Cup, but it's also sort of transitional still, because they're still building towards that home World Cup 4 years from now.
Yeah,
Somebody
actually,
in the chat go for it, Paul.
Well, I was just going to say, like, to go back to what you guys asked earlier, like, is there something that stood out from the pod, from the interviews that was interesting? It hits on that idea that Sam was just talking about. Like, 2 of these episodes are like how good are these guys, right? Like, are they a golden generation? Like, what should we expect from them in Qatar? And, Sam and I have opinions, and we talked about them on the show for sure. Like, we don't hold back our thoughts, but we also talked to Clint Dempsey about it. And we talked to DeMarcus Beasley about it, two guys who know a thing or two. And I thought it was really interesting that, everyone just treats this team as though they're the best U.S. men's national team of all time, because so many guys are playing Champions League and doing things that we've never seen before in some ways. But I think that, what we forget is that the pathway is different for these guys, right? Like, the opportunities are different. It's not that necessarily that these players are so much better than Tab Ramos or Clint Dempsey. It's just that the chances that they had to go to these clubs is different. And Clint Dempsey, he got kind of upset when somebody asked, is this the best USMNT of all time? And he said, like, basically he was like, yo, that's disrespectful to say that. All these guys are 23 and younger. And, like, you could take our 2010 team and our 2014, and I think we'd stack up pretty well against these kids, because we had guys who were the main players at their teams that were being asked to do big things and carry the team in legit ways. So that to me stood out, because it's something that, privately or in our reporting, we try to talk about and try to discuss, like, yo, like, let's slow down a little bit. These kids are still developing. They're not finished products yet. They're inconsistent in their playing time. The situations aren't perfect. Like, just slow down a little bit. And we get a lot of backlash when we say that. So to hear somebody like Clint Dempsey basically say it, to me, was one of the more key quotes that came out of any of the 5 episodes.
Did Clint, as soon as you said that, as soon as you disrespected Clint with that question, did he say,
"You don't know where I'm from, dog"?
That's what he was.
So I was there. I didn't ask the question, but he was basically like, somebody asked, and there were 3 guys there. It was like the CBS Sports Champions League Fan Fest thing at Brooklyn Bridge Park. And so it was him, Maurice Adu, and Charlie Davies, and they were all answering questions. And Clint was the 3rd one to answer, and he was like twitching as he was like getting ready to answer the question. He was ready to go.
Yeah, the guy loves to, boast, but so even our chat is having the conversation. They're saying the 09 Confederation Cup squad was elite. There's a lot of conversations about who's the best, but I think the difference between those teams and now is, what is MLS's role in, the men's national team? There's a belief that after you failed in Couva, we don't want any more MLS people. We don't want our big stars coming back to MLS. We want them all to be, European based. I'm sure that opportunity is available now for a lot of these players. But what do you think? And maybe this isn't covered in your pod, but for those of you who've done this research now, what do you think MLS's role is with the U.S. men's national team moving forward?
We actually do talk about this a little bit. And
okay,
I think
so you cover
MLS
that also? Jeez.
I think
leave a little meat on the bone there, guys.
I think it's mostly a developmental role at this stage. Ideally, there's always going to be guys in the team like Walker Zimmerman, who are playing in MLS and doing really well, and maybe are like a career MLS guy who can contribute to the U.S.
And that's not a bad thing. But the biggest and best players will hopefully be guys like Christian Pulisic, who are at clubs like Chelsea and doing their thing at the highest level of the sport. So, but when you look at it, a lot of the guys that are doing that, not Pulisic specifically, but Weston McKennie, Gio Reyna, they came through MLS academies. And so I think it's like a real infrastructure role. And a lot of that, I think, has really contributed to where these guys are now at such a young age, compared to guys like Dempsey, who had to play 4 years of college soccer at Furman University, which no one has even ever heard of.
Oh, wow. We ain't talking about the powerhouse that is Furman?
Walker Zimmerman went to Furman as well.
It's a soccer powerhouse, Sam. This is a soccer show. You got to be respectful of Furman.
I apologize to Furman.
Yeah, we're firm until we die out here, bro.
I just want to make sure before I let you guys go, there was somebody, Mike Thomas in the chat, said, what happened with Weston in Nashville? Why was he suspended?
Oh, we need to know the real answers.
There's no way
He's got all the details.
You don't have to answer because I know.
Tenorio question right here.
Do you guys actually know and can't say?
Yeah.
Or what?
No, it came out eventually. He violated COVID protocol. Basically, it was revolved around not being in the hotel and not having the right people in the hotel.
Okay.
During the course. But we talked, like, that moment was huge in qualifying. Like, that was the first window of qualification. The U.S. had gone down to El Salvador. My favorite part of the podcast, our producer did an amazing job. it's the one qualifier I missed was El Salvador. It's like a close contact with COVID, and I had to stay in Nashville for like, instead of going to El Salvador. I was very depressed. I've been waiting like months to go to the first qualifier. And Sam went, and of course it was like his best experience in all of qualifying. And we had this like amazing 3-minute long clip talking about like the atmosphere in El Salvador, how great it was, the players talking about it, and it's a really cool 3 minutes of the episode. But they came back from a 0-0 draw, needing a result at home against Canada. And like the night before the game, we're at training, and like Berhalter and Weston are talking to each other on the field. Like nothing had happened. Like the suspension, Weston not playing, that came down to game day. Like that wasn't like a development that happened during the week that they could prepare for. And it impacted the team. And Walker Zimmerman talked to us about it as well. Talked about a team meeting that happened and how they had to try to kind of come together. And then they were down 1-0 in Honduras and pulled out the result. So I mean, that Weston moment, I think, summed up that like you really cannot anticipate what you're going to get in World Cup qualifying, whether it's the atmosphere you're playing against, how teams are going to play you, or even things that are happening within your own camp that you didn't see coming. So, man, that September window was like just totally nuts, and I think it set up pretty well, what we were in for with this team for sure.
All right. Well, guys.
Wait, hold on. Do we get out of where do we finish in the group? Quick prediction from each of you guys.
Second.
Yeah, I think they get out of the group. I think they finish second and go to the knockouts.
All right.
Okay. Alexis is
Iran finishing top of the group. You heard it here first from Sam Stejskal.
That's right.
Tenorio.
You can laminate that and send it to Austin, Texas.
Okay. Perfect. Seriously, you guys are the best. Thank you so much for joining us. Everybody listening and watching, make sure you check out their podcast on the Athletic Network, From Couva to Qatar, remaking the U.S. men's national team. So go check it out. Guys, have a good rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us on, guys. Appreciate it.
Cheers.